All right, here with the Italian Sports Guys. Bada boom!
Bada bing!
And this is the Brian Scheck State Farm Italian Sports Guys show. And Kyle, of course, looking back to Monday's championship game with LSU and Clemson. Of course, LSU pulls off a 42-25 win. And Kyle, it was a magical season, a magical game. And I think it was made all that much more special by the fact that LSU had some adversity early on and overcame that.
Yeah, look, it was the most they had trailed by all season, and in the biggest game, and they never blinked, and it was amazing to see. You're right, you called it a magical season, and we'll get into the details on that and where it shapes up and where it ranks out and all that stuff. But what a great time to be an LSU Tiger right now!
No doubt about it. One of the greatest seasons of all time, and I think there's a little debate about that now. Looking to the early part of the game, as we mentioned, a little bit of struggle. Some of that was field position. What else do you attribute that to, Kyle, to slow start?
I think a lot of it had to do with what Clemson was doing on defense. They came out in that 3-1-7 defense. Brett Venables, the Clemson defensive coordinator, had seen Auburn do that earlier this year and give LSU a little trouble. Yeah, right. So Joe Burrow said early on, he said, I didn't know where they were coming from, and we knew they were coming, but we couldn't figure out from where. We figured there's no way that they would continuously blitz and leave Jamar Chase covered by one person man up. And when we realized that's what they were doing, we kind of started licking our chops. Also, the field position, their defense played well, and their punter got a couple of punts inside the 10-yard line, and that was right up against the lone section of the stadium that was, dominated by the Clemson fan base, and they were loud, and it gave LSU a little bit of a problem. But as they have all season, Craig, they made the adjustments, and boy, did they. And came out, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, we see this with the Saints offense sometimes, with a team that relies a lot on offensive rhythm, so to speak. And once you get those first couple of first downs, I think you loosen up. The defense gets back on their heels a little bit. And I think you saw that first drive where we got a couple first downs, then the big hit to Chase on the long ball. I think that really set this offense going. Yeah,
I think that really had a lot to do with it. Again, LSU was kind of in disbelief that they actually left Jamar Chase, the Biletnikoff winner, man up on a guy who he turned in circles all night long. Finished with 9 receptions, 221 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and had 162 of them in the first half alone.
Yeah, and this cornerback's one of the best. I mean, this kid did not get up more than 60 yards to any one receiver this year, and again, covered him well in a lot of occasions. But again, when the ball's thrown perfectly, you got a big physical receiver like Chase, hard to guard that.
Yeah, before we started tonight, you and I looked at the touchdown passes, and he was absolutely dropping dimes. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Jamar Chase isn't breaking stride, and the ball is right there. And one of the things I saw in one of the breakdowns, I think ESPN's Dan Orlovsky did a great job of kind of bringing this up. Jamar Chase, when you're in man-to-man coverage, specifically if you're a defensive back, you're running stride for stride with the receiver, and when you see him react to catch the ball, hands out, eyes up, eyes big, that's when you make your move to knock the ball down. Football 101 or maybe 201. Right. But the thing that Jamar Chase does so well, it's the little things. I attribute this to some of the Joe Brady effect, is he doesn't stick his hands out till the last second. He doesn't react to the ball to give you a chance to react to the ball.
You're right. It's a very subtle skill, but one that's really important.
Very, very important. Football instinct, regular instincts, and it is something that's coachable. Yeah. And but you saw the DB going to look for the ball, and it was in Jamar's hands. And we've seen this kid since he was a freshman, a sophomore in high school, and he's been fantastic. But he's playing as well as I've ever seen him play at any level.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed from this game, too, when you talk about, in a big game like this, you have to manage your emotions, because if you get too high, you have that letdown. I remember Mark Schleyer talking about in the Super Bowl, it's so hard because you go up there so hyped up and so emotional, adrenaline flowing, and it's 25 minutes before you get on the field and all this pregame stuff is over. And by the end of the first quarter, you feel like you're spent, like you need to get a second win. And I thought, all this talk about Clemson's been in this game before, but LSU played so many big games based on their schedule this season. They really looked like the big game team, and they were even keeled the whole way through.
That's a great point. They were even keeled the whole way through. I don't think their confidence wavered at all.
Yeah.
I think that is attributed also not only to the schedule they had, but the leadership that you get from Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I mean, he's money. He's ice.
Yeah.
But I think that had a lot to do with it. I really do. Clemson, maybe they're doubting themselves. Their first big test of the year against Ohio State, they got to kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat towards the end to win that game. And they did. They beat Ohio State. It's a good confidence builder. But for LSU, it was, here we go again. And again, not to beat the drum of the conference, they're in the SEC and they're in the SEC West. Hands down, far and away, the best division in college football.
No doubt, yeah. You look at also, we talked about the big play, the long touchdown to get us going offensively, but we did dig ourselves a 17-7 hole after that score. So, of course, we come back with 3 quick scores. And I think the last of those scores before the half was really the backbreaker. I think you look at this one, we go 95 yards and 11 plays. They had a pass interference, a 3rd and 19 that we convert, a bad play there for Clemson, of course.
Right.
And, of course, the 29-yard run by Joe Burrow. What a gutsy play and call. If they don't pick up the first down and get out of bounds, we were out of timeouts. That clock might have run out before we could do anything with it. So
right, and it would have been a long field goal, too.
Yeah.
And he had already missed one.
But if you don't get 10 yards, the clock's running. They had 21 seconds when that play started. So it's a gutsy call, but he pulled it off. And, boy, you could just see Dabo's frustration coming off the field. They did a quick interview with him, and he was really frustrated about the dumb plays. You could see it changed the whole team's temperament. They really looked a little shell-shocked after this.
Well, that's what happens in those games, when you don't do what you're supposed to do, or more importantly, to me, if you realize the other team's a little better.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And you see that sometimes. I'll watch LSU play Ohio State in the 2007 National Championship game. And again, down by 10, first half. Ohio State was up 10-0. At the Bonzi Wells long run and a field goal. And LSU drove down methodically and scored. And it looked like you kind of saw the pendulum swing like, okay,
this is who they are.
This is who LSU was. And then later on in that game, Matt Flynn hit early Doucette on an out route to the right side, and it was 3 defenders in the vicinity. Caught the ball, made a move on one hit him and bounced off, and he kind of just slid past the other one like he wasn't there. Yeah. And that's when I looked at my buddy I was sitting with, and I said, yeah, we're better. And I think for me to realize it in section whatever, row whatever, back then, Dabo Swinney certainly has a better seat than I do, and he realized it too. And I think he knew, hey, these kids are for real, these guys are for real, and they are.
Yeah, looking to the second half, of course, give Clemson credit again, a little bit shell-shocked. They came out and got 3 downs and stop for the Tigers and came back and put the score right on us, get the 2-point conversion, cut it to 3. But from that point on, here's the next drives for Clemson. 4 and out, 4 and out, 3 and out, 5 and out. None of those 4 drives more than 14 yards. And then the last drive, 3 plays, 33 yards in the fumble. How do you attribute the turnaround on the defensive side?
I think, again, I don't know if it's a game of much as adjustments as you understand what they're doing as a player. That you realize that when this guard influences and leads up, that ball's going right here. Yeah. Okay. I thought they, you realize their big plays. They opened the game with a reverse call that didn't work. Right. And then their touchdown to Tay Higgins in the first half that did work was another trick play. Right. And it's a weird form of confidence when the team you're playing can only get you with quote-unquote trick plays. Right, and that's all Clemson seemed to really have going for them with some misdirection stuff. They couldn't really line up and come after you. And I think at that point, confidence really started to roll, and LSU figured out they were doing. And make no mistake about the importance of Dave Aranda and being in this program. Yeah. All the hype this year has gone to the offensive staff with Ensminger and Joe Brady. Yeah. But the defense has carried this program for several years, and Dave Aranda has been the coordinator of that defense for the last 4. So
right. And another thing about this, this LSU defense, we got burned a little bit in the first half. I know our buddy Christian Fulton from LSU had a couple calls against him, and a couple plays had a really tough call and a good interception.
Yeah, I thought it was a bunch of bull. That was horrible.
But one thing the reason they love this kid so much in the draft is because the percentage where he plays press coverage. That's the thing. You're going to get beat sometimes when you do that, but it makes it so difficult on the other team when the windows are tight, when you're a little under pressure to hit those small windows. And we saw him overthrow the ball with Trevor Lawrence all second half.
It's a tough throw to make when someone's right on top of your receiver.
Right, that's right.
You want to make sure you don't turn the ball over, and that's what Trevor Lawrence was doing.
The margins are slim,
yeah, and he had some problems with interceptions early this year. Clemson wasn't playing their best through the first so many games, and I think he had a really close scare against North Carolina. Then everybody was all over him. And I think it reset them from a focus standpoint. It's tough for kids that age, I guess, to focus all the way through when you haven't lost a game in 2 years.
Yeah, right.
Or a year and a half. So for those guys to come into that situation, the knock on Trevor Lawrence, the preseason Heisman, he and Tua, was that he was turning the ball over. Yeah. And so from that point on, he quit turning the ball over. But that monster's still there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, and you could see that it had an effect on him. LSU's defense certainly affected him the other night.
Yeah, it's kind of a breakdown in mechanics, too. A lot of times he was getting down low to throw the ball harder, but when you get down low, the ball sails high, right?
Absolutely.
And that's I think he had 13 overthrows, which is the most by any quarterback all season long, and I think 10 or 11 of those were when he was not under pressure, so he really started to get to him. You look at it was still a ball game, though. It was, again, 28-25, as we mentioned. Really the backbreaker, as we discussed. 3rd and 11, they come with a blitz, a beautiful screen pass to Jamar Chase. I don't recall somebody got a block and pinned somebody to the inside.
Sadiq Charles.
A fantastic block, really sprung him, and a great run after catch by Jamar, as we mentioned, looked like a running back on the play.
Yeah, he's got that build. He is not a Randy Moss type of receiver. Right. That's more of the Terrace Marshall on this team. Yeah. Jamar Chase is kind of like a Des Bryant very physical, very thick kid.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's very strong. And so when he gets out in the open field, he's 6'1", he's 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not 6'3", 175. This kid, he knows how to run with the football. Very athletic, very strong, and does turn into a running back mentality afterwards.
Yeah.
So
no doubt. Again, we score on that drive, puts us up by a 43-yard screen pass, and then we puts us up by 10 there.
Something I want to mention too. We talk about LSU coming out in the second half. You score at the end of the first half, you have all the momentum. And that's the coach's dream. Now it's common knowledge now. Right. But and Sean Payton loves to try and get that. Where you score at the end of the half and you get the ball to start the second half. It's a big swing on the scoreboard, momentum, everything. They came out in the second half. The bowl game halftimes are a little bit longer, both bands, and you got all of whatever they do, TV and everything else. The touchdown pass to Thaddeus Moss before halftime, he got popped right in the ribs.
Sure. Got hit.
He got popped, and by 47 Skorsky or whatever the kid's name is, kid ended up getting ejected later on, and that really, I think you saw him come out and start riding the bike. He had to really loosen up. He tightened up some. It was on his left side, arm and ribs kind of deal, and that may have had something to do with LSU came out and didn't look sharp, but when he loosened up, it was game on again.
Yeah, I think they mentioned today, I believe it was torn cartilage in his ribs. So,
okay.
Yeah, so it was a significant injury, but again, he came back. Again, he really demonstrated his toughness. Another one of the great skills he's going to serve him well in the NFL. You
saw last year's Fiesta Bowl game against University of Central Florida, 310-pound nose guard planted one in his ear hole, blindside block on an interception, pick six that Joe Burrow threw, and he came back and threw for 394 yards, and LSU ended their 26-game win streak. That was the year before they ended Clemson's 29-game win streak.
That's right, yeah.
If you got a streak, bring it. We'll take care of it. Yeah.
That's right. And, of course, the finishing touch. Well,
we're going streaking.
By the quad, yeah.
Into the gymnasium.
Yeah. And, of course, tapping it off here was a late touchdown, of course, to the Marshall, I guess, was the last touchdown.
Terrace Marshall.
A little back shoulder throw. Again, another one of the things that he does so well when these guys are covered. Throw him open into a spot where the defender can't get to it.
He did it all season long, and it was never more on display than it was in the biggest game of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, they played several big games, okay? Yeah. But the way he put the ball, the places he was putting the ball, LSU was going to catch it, or nobody was.
Yeah.
Even the dump passes to Edwards-Helaire, the lower center of gravity, he goes down, gets it, and he's already off to the races. It's unbelievable the accuracy with which he's thrown the ball this year for the amount of yardage that he's thrown for.
Yeah, and we talked about they didn't really utilize Clyde Edwards till late in the game, at least in the running game. We thought maybe they were underutilizing him. Maybe they needed to mix it up a little bit to keep him honest. But again, it really goes to show you the bread and butter for this team was 5 wide, finding the right matchup. As Joe Burrow said, when we got 5 wide, they've got to guard 5 guys plus me running the ball. That's 6 options to beat him. And he does such
11 guys.
Such a good job of reading his cues and knowing which one of those 5 options to go to.
The ability for him to process it so quickly, and it doesn't seem like it's being processed quickly to him. Yeah. Like sometimes you get in a rhythm, you're like, I got it now, I'm rolling. For him, it's the way he does it. Yeah. Very Joe Montana-esque.
That's right, yeah. Looking ahead.
One thing else about Clyde, 16 carries for 110 yards is nothing to sneeze at. Also had 5 receptions for over 50 yards. Yeah. Smart enough to slide, keep the clock going, when he stayed in bounds towards the end of the game. The little things that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has done all season long, and then a lot of big things with that is what makes him so special.
Yeah, a lot of heart. He does get his 100 yards before it's all said and done. Again, late in the game, we really pounded these guys, and it kind of took the heart out of them, of course. Right. You talk about where this thing ranks in the all-time greats. Again, this was unarguably, I think, the greatest season of any college football team all time. You can just look at the number of top 10s, the number of top 5s. We beat the top 4 preseason in the poll, but last 3 of those were the last 3 games of the season. So
the other one was Alabama.
That's right, Alabama on the road. And you can talk about, our defense gave up some points all season, but a lot of times those were blowout games. Even in Alabama, look at this, we're up 20 points at halftime, and they had a kick return for a touchdown. We gave up one big play late. Maybe not as close as that game looks. So you look at the numbers. The top 5 teams we beat by an average of 19.6 points, I believe. So
that's unbelievable. It's unprecedented numbers all the way around when you look at the margins of victories, the quality of teams they beat. They beat 7 teams in the top 10.
Yeah, no doubt. And you look at, we talk about, again, the greatest QB season of all time. 60 touchdowns breaks the record over 15 games. That's 4 a game. The only possible way I could see that record being broken is one of these smaller conferences that just doesn't have
like Neil Lomax at Portland State.
Doesn't have the competition. I can't see a team in a Big 5 conference for a long, long time. I can't never say never, but beating that kind of record of averaging 4 touchdowns a game.
Yeah, it's unheard of what he's done, and the most dominant season I'd seen before this, one single season. I would say the best career I've ever seen from a quarterback in college football may have been Tim Tebow in my time. Yeah. I thought he was dominant for 4 years. The best single season I ever saw was Cam Newton. Newton's 2 now.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow's had the best season I've ever seen from a quarterback in college football for 1 year. Unbelievable.
No question.
And the record books will show that.
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts on the game, Kyle?
Millions of thoughts. It was a special moment. I scored an 11th hour ticket. I want to thank my friends over at GOL for the hospitality. That worked out really well, and I was literally waiting on an Uber to come home and watch it with where you watch it at my brother's house, and I had to cancel the Uber. I ended up downloading the ticket, and at the 11th hour, I got in the stadium, and it's something I'll never forget. I've been there for the other two they won in the modern era, and there when they lost to Alabama. Yeah. But it was a recap on a tremendously special season from a team that did things that simply 2 years ago was the furthest thing from anyone's mind that an LSU offense would go out there and perform this season the way they did. Hats off to Coach Ed Orgeron for going to Steve Ensminger as offensive coordinator and saying, hey, we want to bring somebody to add another element. Yeah. Hats off to Steve Ensminger, a true LSU Tiger, quarterbacked them in the 70s. For you young bucks out there, was a tremendous leader and has been a coach that never wants the limelight.
Yeah, I think you touched upon something. First of all, thank you for mentioning Coach O, because you can't end the segment without mentioning how special this has been. You look at a couple of years back where he was kind of in limbo about getting that job, and then the Troy loss, how bad that looked. But he really stuck to his guns. He really felt like he was the guy to turn his program around and kept working and plodding away. And you look at, but the lack of ego, which was so impressive. So many guys get caught up in that. And, again, Ensminger bringing on Brady, he didn't have a problem with that. Coach O delegating different things to different coaches, not a problem at all. He just wanted what was best for his team.
Yeah, Steve Ensminger's 61 years old. Joe Brady's 30. They had a little bit of kind of a father-son thing going there, or at least a favorite uncle.
Right.
Yeah. And the way they worked hand in hand together, it was everyone pulling for the same common goal. Which anytime you have a season like they had, and again, going down as the greatest season anyone's ever had in college football, probably, is you have to have that. Steve Ensminger called first and second down. Joe Brady called third. Yeah. Okay? And then when the defense was on the field for LSU, Steve Ensminger was charting the next plays, and Joe Brady would get on the phone with Joe Burrow down on the field, and they'd go over what they saw. Yeah. Okay, so make no mistake about those three people working. And then Dave Aranda, when his defense got questioned early on, and they had reason to be questioned. They weren't playing right. They had the debacle at Ole Miss defensively, but they weren't going to stop us. We just kept outscoring them. Yeah. That was a fundamental difference. Coach O was the first one to say after that game, that's kind of on me because I wanted to attack and Dave Aranda wanted to stay home. Once again, realizing quickly that, okay, I can't coach every position like I did at Ole Miss. It didn't work. Yeah. And handing his controls back to one of the best defensive coaches we've seen in a long time in college football. Let them do their thing. That's what you said you were going to do. Like you said, he stuck to his guns. And a big dude from Little La Rose, Louisiana, down to Bayou and Bayou Lafourche, where the Bayou runs purple and gold if you look long enough at it, led the state's flagship school to perhaps the greatest season ever in college football. It is a magical, magical time. Hats off to Bebe Orgeron. And hats off to that entire team.
Yeah, and one more thing on Coach O. I had a coworker ask me when they first hired Coach O, it was like, what do the people down there in Louisiana think about him? I said, well, when we lost Tom Herman, people are not sure if he's the right guy. They're still kind of on the fence for it. But the difference is some programs, if they don't get the coach they want, the fans really hope the guy doesn't succeed. They kind of, I said, everybody supports Coach O and wants him to be the guy for this job. And
absolutely.
It really proved to be true. So thank you, Louisiana sports fans, for getting behind this guy and sticking with him and saying, he's our guy. Let's see how he can do.
He might not be perfect, but he's perfect for us.
Perfect for us, that's right.
And Marcus Spears said this yesterday on ESPN, on Get Up with Mike Greenberg Tuesday morning, the day after the game. He said, let's be real about it. Around the rest of the country, some people thought because of the way he talked that Coach Orgeron was dumb. Jimmy Johnson, Tommy Tuberville, on down. You read anything, I'm going to tell you, he's one of the sharpest football minds I've ever been around. Dude's been doing it his whole life. He is a football coach, and he knows what the hell he's doing. And boy, did he bring out the best in his team this year, and that's what coaching is.
Yeah, no question about it. And I saw a story today, one last story with Coach O, why he's such a good recruiter. There was a high school coach who had like 170-some people at his high school. They were 0-10 one year, and he goes to visit them when he's in the area. He says, why are you coming down here, Coach? And how do you find me? He says, I got my ways. He thought enough of that program and that coach.
When you needed some support the most,
he shows up. If he does get a 4 or 5 star, wait till do you think he's going after that?
Absolutely. I'll tell you something else. That's a mirror image of what he's been through as a human being. Ed Orgeron.
Right.
He's a guy who's gotten a second chance as well. We all know about the stories, and someone gave him a second chance, and rather than say, okay, I'm back, baby, woo, I'm back on top of the mountain, he never forgot what's happened to him, never forgot where he's been, and he pays it forward.
Yeah.
Or is it backwards?
Right.
Whatever.
Pay it forward, that's right. All right, we'll come right back for segment 2. We'll talk about the offseason for both LSU and New Orleans Saints. Kyle's going to the Senior Bowl next week, so we'll talk a little bit about offseason. We'll look ahead to the NFL playoff games as well, give our predictions. We are
the Italian Sports Guys.
Bada boom.
Bada bing.